Remember the Forgotten.
Chapter 4. The Dark Figure. The sun was already below the horizon by the time James and Sapphire rode into Machiavel the next day, leaving the sky a dark blue while the dirt of the path before them smoothly transitioned into the cobbled road of the large village. The empty streets, flanked by the long and regimented rows of small buildings and homes, were mostly silent, with the rowdy noise of the Drinking Demon Tavern getting ever louder as the two approached its place just off the main road. The lights shining through the windows were brighter than the stars in the sky, and James couldn't help but stare upwards as he and Sapphire dismounted. "You order us some dinner," Sapphire decided, grabbing a hold of the horse's reins. "I'll take him to the stables." With a glance but no words, James walked up to the tavern doors and pushed them open, stepping through into the lively atmosphere. The sudden change from a quiet starry night to the boisterous tavern caught him off guard this time. The building was not huge, but it was large enough to not feel crowded, even with the dozens of lively people scattered between the round tables of the wide room. The wooden surfaces of the place were smooth and clean, a stark difference from the dive in which James had spent his previous evening. Even the bar was more sophisticated, flanked on either side by wooden pillars with hooks that held the yet unused flagons, and the serving staff stepping intermittently from the kitchen door behind it, carrying plates of warm food to and fro, gave the place a certain sense of sophistication. A fireplace in the corner of the building burned brightly, so too casting the whole place in a comfortable orange glow. James walked immediately up to the bar, proceeded to order the usual from the barmaid, a bowl of stew and a flagon of ale each, and then went to take a seat at a small table down by the window. Just as he was about to sit, he felt a tap on his shoulder. Sluggishly swinging his head around, James set his eyes on a familiar face. Jorian, the tavern keeper, standing right behind him. He was a short man, middle-aged, with a now slight frame that looked as if it may have been impressive in his youth. His head was bald and face fierce with wrinkles after a long life behind the bar. James didn't care much for the man, but he provided him and Sapphire with cheap lodging in return for keeping peace in the establishment, so he rarely saw fit to complain. "Hey, James," Jorian addressed him, nodding over to another corner of the tavern. "There's someone here who wants to see you. Said he's got some work." James followed his gaze over to a small table on the opposite side of the tavern, right underneath the stairs and caked in shadow. There, he saw a cloaked figure, seated, seemingly staring back at him. James could only barely make out his features from the light of the flickering candle sitting on his table. Jorian leaned in a little closer to James, his tone becoming hushed. "He asked for you guys by name." "Right, cheers, Jorian," James sighed, giving another glance towards the shadowy figure, who seemed still to be watching him. Jorian gave James a firm pat on the back before walking across the room and eventually back behind the bar, where he proceeded to greet some new customers. James stared at the strange figure for just a few seconds more, before finally moving his legs and making his way over across the creaky floorboards. "I hear you have a job for us," he said as he arrived, looking down at the seated stranger and his now clear features illuminated in the orange candlelight. The peculiar boy looked back up at James, revealing the almost cloud-shaped, pale brown hair sitting beneath his hood. He was clearly young, around 16 by James's reckoning, though his short stature, boyish face, and timid expression all served to make him look younger than he probably was. His eyes were a dark green, settled and unstriking within the ambient light, and a simple brown satchel hung comfortably from his shoulder. The cloak, which had seemed dark and imposing from a distance, had turned out to be less so, a simple brown and baggy covering which looked only to barely fit. Last of all, James noticed the large book nestled tightly under the boy's arm, with an unusual feature. The binder had attached to it the knotted end of a thin piece of rope, the rest of which fell and coiled on the floor before rising up again, soon reaching its other end, which was tied tightly around the boy's upper arm. Yes," the boy said, barely managing eye contact. I was hoping to hire you to escort me into the forest tomorrow. Are you Pasley?" James's face hardened at the sound of the name. "I'm James," he corrected the boy, crossing his arms sternly. "Ah, I'm sorry," muttered the boy. "Are the others here?" James nodded, lifting his chin. "Sapphire's outside." "Oh," came the boy, sounding slightly confused. And Pasley? James looked him deep in the eyes, unflinching and unrevealing. He's dead. The boy swallowed hard, visibly shocked and seemingly taken aback. Oh my, I'm sorry, he managed. I heard that he was a great man. James nodded, slowly, suppressed anger rising for a reason he did not quite know. The both of them heard the creaking of the tavern door as Sapphire finally stepped in from the dark outside. She scanned the room calmly, quickly finding James and strolling over to where he stood beside the boy's table. Who's this? She asked. The stranger raised his head. He's got some work for us, interrupted James. Sapphire looked down at the stranger curiously, appraising him in seemingly much the same way James had. And what work might that be? She asked. I need someone to come with me into the forest tomorrow, answered the boy, with slightly more certainty than before, as if speaking words he had prepared. I heard you were the ones to come to. Are you mercenaries? We prefer the term hired help, Sapphire told him, taking a few steps closer. Where is it you're headed? The young man slowly slid the strange book out from under his arm and opened it up. The many pages crinkled as he flicked through, until a loose page slid out and fell onto the table. It was wrinkled and dirty, looking like it had been damaged heavily in the past. Here, said the boy, putting his finger down onto the parchment. It was a map. Although there was no text, James and Sapphire could easily identify their very own village of Machiavel inked crudely near the edge, while a dotted line led out along the path southwards. Before it could reach a charted destination, it careened suddenly left into the crudely drawn woods, finally ending with an X in a seemingly random part of the forest. And, James asked, somewhat suspicious, why is it that you need us? It's not even that far. Well, replied the boy, I'm hoping I won't, but, just in case, you are adept at fighting monsters, yes? James huffed. Now that depends on how much we're getting paid. I'll give you 10 gold pieces a day for the journey, the boy offered. And I'll double it if you actually have to fight anything. Sure, agreed James with a nod. These woods are as dull and empty as they come, so we won't have any trouble there. When? The boy seemed discombobulated for a moment, as if not having expected it to have been so easy. He stumbled. I was thinking in the early morning? James grimaced and went to talk, but Sapphire interrupted him. That's fine, she said. We'll see you then. James pursed his lips, but he did not argue. He eventually nodded his agreement to the boy, then stood up as he and Sapphire began to make their way back to their table. I'm Samuel, by the way, the boy told them as they walked away. Soon, the pair were seated back at their own table, where 3 steaming bowls of stew waited for them, a flagon of ale beside each.